Alright, hi, hello, I'm ready. I'm 1K LP Challenger. I'm mostly making this video explaining some of the gold comet augments for some of my friends who are a little bit confused on when to pick certain augments or how strong some of the augments are right now. This is for patch 14.5. Hopefully my insights help. There's a lot of augments to get through, so let's just get into it. First off, we're going in alphabetical order, is Ascension. This augment kinda fucking sucks. It can be considered in some heavy stall comps, like Gorilla Reroll or Fail 6 Reroll if you're playing towards the 6 Bruiser front line. But otherwise, in almost every single situation, this will not proc until it's too late into the combat. After 15 seconds of combat, usually your entire front line's dead, barring, certain circumstances with like Dumbify or Glemify. And in that time, if you just get 60 damage amp on your carries, that's not enough for them to just wipe and clean up everything else. Sometimes the combats end by 15 seconds in. It's too little, too late. So in almost every situation, I avoid clicking this augment. It's just doesn't proc and does largely nothing. Bad luck protection. This is a pretty solid augment for AD comps. If you can use the crit, it's really solid. It's pretty good if you are having crit items that are not IE or Striker's Flow. The new Striker's Flow augment or item, it used to be pretty decent with, like, old Garviger used to be pretty decent with this augment, however, since they changed it, now you need to crit in order to proc the damage amp effect, and you can't crit with this augment, so IEs are a little less efficient, but stuff like Hand of Justice, Last Whisper, QSS all end up being pretty good in this. So if you're playing an AD comp with multiple carries like Bandmarks, MF, Zeri, or Slayers, it can be really solid. In solo carry comps, where only one person is benefiting, it doesn't actually increase their particular damage by much. It's mostly good for people, or for comps where you have a lot of people who are wanting that extra AD, because everyone gets base 25% crit chance. Having that turn into 25% AD is pretty solid. Big friend, this augment is kinda bad. It's pretty hard to proc, and the effect when you do proc it is a little underwhelming. If you are playing some sort of reroll variations where you have 3-star backline, and your backline's able to proc it, it can be pretty nice to take in those situations. If your frontline's able to proc it already, it can be also pretty nice, but usually you only have 1 or 2 units that are able to even put this, proc it, and that's usually your main tank. And if you don't have a second unit that is 1750 HP in your frontline, and able to proc this effect, then your main tank won't be able to get the -10 damage for rest of combat on themselves, which loses a lot of value since that's the person you care most about having that damage reduction on. Most comps this is bad, reroll comps this is like maybe a B tier augment, but I don't really consider this in a lot of cases. Especially if I don't have belt items, it becomes especially with no belt items. Blazing Soul, this is like the generic AP augment. If you're playing an AP comp, it's probably decent. The items that you give to your main carry do matter a little bit, since some carries, in some comps that run certain 5 costs, a lot of 5 costs have like really high base attack speed, especially this Kabuki unit. I think he has like 1.0 base attack speed, and this means that he almost always steals the first proc of Blazing Soul, and that means that your main carry doesn't have a combat augment for 30 seconds, and that's pretty bad. If you take this, be careful about playing Kabuko, and be careful about itemization. You would prefer your main carry to get the first proc, but if they get the second proc, it's also fine. But yeah, having some level of attack speed so they can win 50-50s is pretty good. Especially Brand, his ass has such slow attack speed, it feels like, by base, so having like a Giant Slayer or Striker's Flail or Void Staff or Morello or something that gives him just a little bit of attack speed so he can win a bunch of the 50-50 TBs against the other units in the comp are pretty nice. In that board, similarly, although Kabuko is pretty nice, if you are not carrying Ziggs, then you can try to go for some other 5 cost options to cap out instead. I think Samira also has pretty high attack speed, so she'll end up taking it, so in streets it's not even that good, but in a lot of AP comps it is just decent. Don't overthink it. Bulky Buddies. This is decent in Vanguard Marksman because their shields are based off of a percentage of their max HP, and they gain durability while shielded. So they use both parts of this Bulky Buddies passive pretty well. Any Vanguard setup is honestly decent with this, but other front lines are a little less good since they don't use the stats as efficiently. Bulky Buddies 2 is just, the shield isn't super big and it's just not a lot of stats. It can be okay if you have summons, stuff like dummies or ZZ Rots, or if you're playing a Viego on your board, you get more value out of the augment, so more HP to go around. But as you get a lot of units, it can also clutter up your positioning, and that can get pretty difficult. If you have other positioning things to consider, stuff like support items and street demon layouts, or other augments like LDP or immovable object, or share the spotlight, stuff like that, then Bulky Buddies gets really suspicious. So in most of those cases, I would just stray away from this if at all possible. Bronze for Life. This augment's pretty weak. You have to be playing very few comps in this game want to be playing a lot of bronze traits nowadays. The ones that can proc a lot of bronze traits to give this value are like Nitro Tempo, playing with like 3 Nitro, 2 Dynamo, filling out a bunch of traits using the trait bots like Jin and Kindred and Shyvana in order to proc a bunch of 2 traits is doable, but even then it's just not enough benefit. If you're a genius, maybe you can do it with like Wandering Trainers or Wandering Golems or something like that, but in almost every single comp, this set at least, it's playing towards a 5 or 7 vertical, and you don't get Bronze for Life benefit from that. So most comps, this is just not really takeable, unfortunately. Big fall from grace from last set. Climb the Ladder. This is A to like A- tier if you're playing a 7 trait. It's honestly just pretty decent in 7 traits, but other than that, it is almost unpickable. The nerf from 6 of every stat to 5 of every stat is definitely felt a little bit. It used to be like the vertical trait, and it is still, you know, the vertical trait pickup, but there are times when now I might consider some other augments over Climb the Ladder on this, especially if I'm playing like a 5 trait at max, or if I'm playing a main carry that doesn't benefit from that trait. Say I'm playing like Vertical Divinicore, but my Zed doesn't have Divinicore mod or Divinicore emblem yet, then I'm not really considering this. Or if I'm playing Vexotag, then I'm really not considering this. Whereas in previous patches, maybe you could have. But now it's only pickable if you are playing a 7 trait. So check if you're playing 7 trait. If you're not, it's not really doable. Flockwork Accelerator. This augment is decent in Van Marks, and maybe Emissary, and maybe Cog Reroll, like all the auto attack based backline reroll comps, but otherwise, it is really, it gives kind of useless stats. The delayed attack speed is really not good for AP comps. A lot of AP comps are pretty, a lot of fights get decided on the quality of their first cast, and as such, upfront attack speed is better than like scaling attack speed. The first couple casts are the most important, whereas in the AD auto-attacking comps, like auto-attacks are all the same. So in most AP comps, this is kind of worthless and can't even really be considered combat augment, but if you are playing towards one of those Van Marks or AD backline lines, it can be pretty decent. Cloning Facility. This augment is can be so strong. It's A tier if you have a good unit to copy, especially frontline units, stuff like a 2-star Mundo, 2-star Vi, 2-star Alistar, just 2-star any frontliner gets so strong with Cloning Facility. There are so many decent Cloning Facility units mid and late game. Couple to note is Dynamo uses this augment super well. Elise can go on the Cloning Facility pretty decently if you have an Elise 2. since the cloning facility clone benefits from the traits. So the Elise will get Dynamo procs on, or the Elise clone will get the Dynamo procs at the same time if you have that trait active. And she still reduces the magic resist of the enemy units, getting your team even closer to true damage if you're playing a mostly AP team, which you should be in Dynamo. And then that transfers later into Aurora, who the clone can still drag in its own unit, so you can drag in 2 2-star 5 costs, and that ends up being a shit ton of value. Even in non-Dynamo setups, you can still get a decent amount of value. You can put stuff like Sejuani 2 or Leona 2 on there in vertical setups. You can just put 2-star, like any 2-star 4-cost tank. It ends up being really solid. And it's just a lot of tempo if you have a good spot for it. Although, if you don't have a super good unit to put in it, like your upgrade backline instead of upgrade frontline, it might be better to take an item augment for tempo instead. In strategist or street domain based comps where the positioning of your board actually matters, it's a little weaker because you really don't want your Nico to go into the backline, since if your Nico is in your backline, then she's getting damage amp instead of durability from her cast or from her trait, and that lowers her tankiness a lot. But aside from those situations, this is a really solid augment, great for tempo, scales decently well for an augment that is mostly meant for tempo, and yeah, it's good. Cronswell, this is best if you can make a good slam with Rod. A lot of these will augment, so Spears will, Crowns will, Maces will, get a lot better if you can actually make an item with the augment. However, this isn't an augment that says gain a Rod. This is an augment that says gain 10 AP and 8 armor for your whole team, and then a Rod just like appears, right? You need to think about how your team can use that 10 AP and 8 armor. Usually you just think about the 10 AP and the 8 armor as just kind of an afterthought because there usually is some level of physical damage in the game from auto attacks or whatnot. But this can be bumped up from like a B tier middle of the pack augment for an AP board to like an A tier augment if there's a lot of AD, and especially if you can slam a pretty good item with the Rod. Only pick this in AP. If you're gonna slam like a Ginsu for Zeri or like a Ginsu for Philios, then you might as well just FF, man. If you're having trouble deciding between this and another combat augment, first look at how useful the Rod is for yourself, and then also look at how useful the 8 armor is for your team. If it's mostly AD lobby, then the 8 armor can be pretty useful, and you'll be able to get like full value out of the augment. Cybernetic bulk. A lot of these cybernetic augments, like bulk, implants, and uplink, are a lot weaker. Ever since the items have been toned down, and you just get less value out of this augment, you know, it's just really hard to proc it. Even beforehand, it wasn't even that great. It was just kind of like, alright, but now you have a lot of trouble proccing this unless you have a prismatic item aug. It can be B tier in certain setups, if you get a lot of items on a lot of carries, especially if you have like some TG setups with Lucky Gloves or something, but in almost every case, you want 3-item carry, 3-item second carry, and then 3-item main tank, and then you're not really spreading items. If you have some quality over quantity setup or something, this class of augments can be pretty decent, but it's just the stats aren't super insane on it to justify what you're doing. Cybernetic implants, this is also C tier. The AD is not super crazy for you. In Van Marks, some people might consider this, but it's really not that good because it's just not very important for that comp to gain AD because you already have AD. It's mostly for like melee reroll or like melee carry comps like Zed, you might consider this, and like Slayer maybe. Yeah, it's kind of the same case as the previous one where you kind of want more items for it, but it's a combat dog, and it's just a little weak. Uplink. This is probably the most pickable out of the others, just because the 2 mana per second can be useful for some backline carries, especially if you're lacking mana gen. If you don't have a Shojin or something, this can actually help a lot. But if you have a Shojin, then it's still like not super crazy. Don't pick this if you're playing Dynamo. I see some people see like, oh, Dynamo wants mana, or like Dynamo is a mana trait, it wants mana. It's not like Visionary from last set, so if you're playing Dynamo, you would rather just have AP so your casts actually do more damage than more mana, because you already get a lot of mana. More mana does nothing for you, but yeah. It's mostly for like Spirit Demon setups where you have no Shojin and you need some mana per second on your backliners. Glass Cannon. You need multiple carries to make this viable. If you're only getting Glass Cannon value on one person, then it's really not that good. You want multiple people to benefit from the damage amp, because 20 is a pretty decent amount. It's less valuable in traits that already give damage amp, stuff like Gold Knock, stuff like Strategists don't get as much value. If you have a Gunblade, it's also pretty nice, because your backline units get healed up. There is a decent amount of trip damage in this set, and a lot of the backline targeting units benefit from or choose their targeting based off of lowest HP within a certain range. So if your units start at a lower HP, then they're more likely to get jumped, as opposed to your shitter frontliners getting jumped. So this can be a little annoying in those cases, but if you have a Gunblade, then a little bit negates that. Glemify. This augment is pretty situational. You have to have a lot of money, and usually you want decent units. You can pick it if your board is shit and you are weak and you are poor, but if you have a decent board, if you have like bruisers or something to feed to your golem, it can be good to pick this anyway. You just roll once or twice on 3-2 after you pick this augment, and then go to 4-5, play any uncontested line, and enjoy having a huge slow static on the front line. An important thing to note with this is before you click this, if you know that you are going to click this, you need to set up your board so you have as many bruises on your board, and then you also want to activate Divinity Core traits if you can. Stuff like Gragas and Sentinels are really valuable. They give AD and HP to your whole team. Even Marksman just going in so they have extra stats can be pretty good. Putting units on, or healthier units on better Street Demon hexes, or giving them more HP, stuff like that, just gives them more stats to feed, which is good. And any little optimization, especially if it's free, is worth making for this Glemify augment. You need a good amount of money to play this, though. I need to reiterate, if you try to pick this from a spot where you are poor, and you won't even be able to 4-5 it, it's probably not very good. As well as if your board is already good and it doesn't have units that have a lot of HP. So say you're playing like Echo 2 and like a LeBlanc 2 as your upgrades, and you have no bruisers, no AD units, no way to really get like HP activated, and you want to keep your board of quality, then maybe just keep your board instead of picking this. And if there's something else better, then yeah, just pick that instead. Healing Orbs. This is a kind of placebo augment. It looks like it's doing a lot because you see the huge chunk of HP, and sometimes it has like these carry moments where your unit is 1v5 and it gets like 4 Healing Orbs procs off of killing people and ends up killing everyone because of it. But like the difference is, if you had a good combat augment that procced at the start, you wouldn't even have your unit be in a 1v5 situation. It's a feel-good augment. It's only really useful for melee carries who are like constantly close to people who are dying, so they can actually get the procs, and they are units that want to like kind of sustain through stuff like Rengar and Graves. But for a lot of front to back comps, even if you are solo tank, it is kind of hard to control who gets the proc, since a lot of solo tank comps aren't like true solo tank. Like even in Anima Squad, you have Leona as your solo tank, but if she's walking, even if you put her by herself with the stone plating and let her get surrounded, like Silas might still walk up into auto attack range and steal a healing orb proc, and HP on Silas is worthless. I will say though, this is better if your unit has a decent amount of resist rather than a lot of health. Since it is flat healing, it matters more on units that can convert that health into like more EHP. If you take this in a bruiser comp, you can just FF, because like healing 400 from 4000 is like 10%, but healing 400 from 2000 is 20%. It's a much bigger percentage of your health bar getting healed. On 2-1, you can also pick it if you feel like your board is strong, and you want some tempo, but you don't have any item augments or econ augments, and your other augments are shit, like, the flat heal can be pretty impressive in the early game, but on 3-2 and 4-2 it loses value as the game goes on because the amount of healing doesn't actually scale. Even though it does like have more procs to get, like it's just not as useful in those later rounds. Health as well. This is an A tier augment, pretty solid. It's combat strength that also gives you a decent amount of econ. It's really solid in Vex. Vex converts that overheal into damage. In most melee rerolls, such as Slayers and Graves, stuff that has healing already, it can be pretty good. If you already have healing items slammed, it's also pretty solid because you can proc the gold very soon. I think one of the Gunblade comps doesn't actually like this, is Morgana. Even though you can say, oh, you know, the Bastions getting the healing means a lot, they don't actually deal that much damage. It's only Morgana dealing the damage, and Morgana having more omnivamp for herself doesn't really do anything. It's not like the excess omnivamp goes into healing other people. The Slayer trait and the Vex trait, or the Vex unit, have ways for excess healing to get turned into value. Vex through damage and Slayer through it healing the lowest HP person. But Morgana doesn't do that. So a lot of comps can't use omnivamp. In the situations where this is good, this is like pretty damn good, but a lot of comps just can't use this at all. Last Stand. In the right spot, this can be one of the best augments in the game. It's really good in the win-out comp. Stuff like Cypher, stuff like Vex, just because the omnivamp is really good in Vex, and all the stats end up being pretty good. And Amps, which is just currently the strongest comp in the game, can swing huge placements with this augment. Getting the extra life and getting all those stats can be so big for those comps. If you have if you're really healthy and you're playing a relatively low cap board, say you're playing for like a Van Marks or an Anima Squad board where the boards cap out somewhat low. Anima Squad can't cap out high, but for the sake of this argument, I'm saying like stuff like that goes fast 8 and then maybe can go 9. And doesn't cap out as high as stuff like Strat Amps. You probably want to stray away from this augment. You'd get more value out of keeping up your tempo and just being stronger for most of the game than having a dead augment that applies as 1 extra life and maybe winning 1 combat. Unless you're playing for a fast 9 and like sack into fast 9, there are probably better things for you to pick. Item Collector. This augment has had a pretty big fall from grace. It used to be really solid, and then they nerfed it. And then they also nerfed the number of items you get, and then they never gave this a compensation buff, so now this is just straight up worse. If you have infinite items, or like have or playing a really high exotech setup, or have like Wandering Trainer, or like I'm the carry now, you know, one of those dummies that equips items, or are in the Golem encounter, maybe you can consider this a little bit more since it will give you slightly more value of that. But there are just better options a lot of times. An important thing to note in mid-game is slamming components does count as a unique item. So if you are looking to, like, if you have an odd number of components, you should slam your last component just so you do get item collector value, but it's not something too big to note. Just make sure you are making, or like don't even have to worry about making unique stuff, just as long as you're not slamming a bunch of the same item, it'll probably be fine. Investment strategy. This combat augment is like one of the weakest reroll like scaling combat augments. It's meant to be pretty strong. It's meant to be good for like gorilla reroll and stuff like that, but it's really niche. It takes a really long time to get going. It doesn't even give you that much HP. I know Reinforcing Skeletor gives you like pretty much the same HP, except you get that from the jump, and that also gives you units. Whereas this is just less HP, it takes longer to get going. When you send it on 3-2, or when you send it on 3-1 down to 30, you lose value. It's just not very good. Even in the best case scenario, it's okay at best. In order to take this, you need like full econ opener or econ portal, and you need to have the units already, and it has to be 1 cost reroll, and too many conditions for this to even be usable. Inspiring Epitaph, this is probably like as generic gets. This is always okay. I'm doubtful any comp will be too terribly sad to have this as one of their combat augments, but sometimes there are better options that are a little bit more specific and a little bit more conditional. If you feel those conditions, it'll be better. It can be worth to surround a frontliner, like have your Leona, instead of being on the edge of one side, have her be surrounded by shitters to feed her shields, and then have those shitters be 1 tile away, so have a 1 tile space in between them and the other units in the front line. That way they're for sure feeding into the Leona. And that's also something for bulky buddies. You want to make sure you have a shitter tied to your real tank and the shitter dies. You don't want to tie real tank with a real tank. You want to have real tank with shitter, and then make sure the shitter dies and feeds your real tank the shield. Little buddies, this is the fast 8 combat augment. So solid. Only really unpickable in Vex because you play 3/3 costs in that comp, but in almost every other fast 8 comp, or even some fast 9 comps, wherever you're playing around 4 and 5 cost carries, this is good. It just gives you a lot of stats that matter. It's worth substituting 3 costs for 1 costs that give you the same traits, like going Kindred for Jinx in Van Marks, just because the stats are going on units that actually matter instead of just having slightly better unit quality for a unit that's not even going to have items most of the time. This is just so solid. On 3-2, it's a little suspicious because you do pretty much lose tempo for a whole stage, but in some comps it can even be worth it then. However, on 4-2, this is almost always an insta-pick if you fulfill the conditions. Long Distance Pals, LDP. So this augment requires 2 itemized carries of the same damage type to get okay value. I think it's relatively weak, but if you do have 2 itemized carries of the same damage type, like in Van Marks or in Slayers, or in Street Demons if you have corner and corner hexes, it can be actually pretty damn good. It's just getting to that point while having one of your augments be a combat augment is difficult, since you do need item augments or an item portal for that to happen, for you to have enough items to do that and also have a main tank. But it can be decent if you get there. As well as if you have other positioning stuff where it gets really tricky, like if your Street Demon hexes are pretty bad for it and you might lose value on some of the signature hexes for some of your units, or you have immovable object, or you have some other positioning augment, this can be a little suspicious to take. It's something that you can usually work around, but even if you work around it, you're going to be leaving yourself somewhat rigid. Mentorship, this is better in reroll. Its flat stats make it decent on 2-1 as well. If you have Nitro, the Nitro bot will also benefit from it, and if you have dummies, they also benefit. So this can be pretty decent in some of those situations. Most fast-rated comps don't really like this because you're playing a lot of 4 costs. You need to hit a 5 cost to get value out of it, and you don't usually want to have to rely on a 5 cost on level 8. If you have other positioning stuff as well, like usually Street Demons comes to mind, or bulky buddies, this can be pretty annoying to work around. You don't want to grade too much mentorship value. It is only 200 HP and 10 attack, or in 16 attack speed, 220 HP, 16 attack speed. So if you're getting owned by a Sejuani stun, or getting owned by Zed jumping your backline, it can be worth the split and lose a little value, especially on shitters. You usually want it on your good units, like your 3 costs and your 4 costs, or assuming your 3 costs are itemized, but like you can lose mentorship value on some of your shitters if it means that you can get better positioning for a Sejuani stun or something. It is one of the more takeables on 2-1 just because of flat stats, but yeah, it's kind of middling in a lot of situations. Moonlight. This augment has big potential, but also can be useless depending on the situation. You have to play a board that only plays 1/1 cost. Amp is a great board for this. You only play Nidalee. An example of a bad board is like Anima Squad and what is it, Street Demons, because they play 2/1 costs, and it's pretty important for you to fill out your traits with those 1 costs. You can't reliably pin down who is going to get the buff. It has to be a carry as well, because the trait or the augment gives them 45 AP and 45 AD, and that is a very sizable amount of stats. That is like an item's worth of stats. So getting that, you can itemize a 1 cost and make them pretty powerful. Morgana is a prime example of this. You can do Morgana, move your items off of Elise, or dual carry Morgana with Elise, and then go to a fast 9. Nidalee is super good with this. Maybe... I'm kind of blanking on some units. Maybe you could do Kindred, but that's not super good, because if you would be doing Kindred, you're probably playing Nitro, or you're playing Van Marks, and in Van Marks you play Silas, so maybe that's a little sus, but I know the situations are Morgana and Nidalee I see the most. And you can just put like leftover items on them, keep your main carry items on your main carry, but it does save you from having to upgrade two 4 costs in order to carry. You can just have the 1 cost that you get for free, and it's can be pretty nice. Mana Flow. This augments a lot of units don't scale with cast as much as they used to. In set 13, this used to be really good because the extra mana would be multiplied by Visionary, or having more casts would be super good for Dominators because they gain AP based off of their mana that they spend, but here in this set it's a little less applicable. It can be good in huge caster based setups, stuff like Vertical Techie, or if you're playing Streets, it can be okay if you don't have Shojin, but if you have mana items, this becomes a little obsolete. It's just not that big of a gain, but, you know, if you're needing it, it can be good, and it can be really nice if you don't have those mana items. Otherwise, just a little unimpressive. In most AD comps, it's kind of unpickable. In Vex, it's kind of doesn't do anything. In Dynamo, it's pretty bad, actually. So, a lot of situations where this isn't good. Mace as well. This is, I rate it as just a little bit better than the other ones, than Crown's Will and Spear's Will, with the condition being that it's a little bit more conditional when you can pick it. You usually need spell crit if you're trying to pick this in the AP, which is fine since a lot of AP comps like to build JG anyway. In AD comps, you don't actually need spell crit in order to pick this. Like, you can pick this and just play Van Marks because your auto attacks can crit by base, so them just having the extra attack speed and auto attack, or in crit chance, just makes them do more damage. It is nice if you have an IE though, and bonus points if you can slam the crit item with something. I rate this as slightly better than the other two, than Crunchwell and Spear as well, just because I think the stats it gives are pretty nice, and crit's just a good component. Double Sack. This is very similar to Inspiring Epi in the cases in which you would pick it, which is when your other stuff is bad and you need a generic combat. It's mostly for front to back comps, where you can have most of your units actually benefit from the armor and MR. Maybe there's a case to be made in back to front comps, but I feel like this would not really be your first choice in those sort of things. And by rushdown comps, I mean stuff like 6 rapid fire or 8 techies, where you're going super front loaded damage and you don't really care about being tanky. It gains value if you have Glemify or Dumbify, because those count as part of your team and they will also gain the HP or the armor and MR, increasing their effective health pool better. If you are playing like a solo frontliner setup, it's still fine to do this, but you want to make sure to have your solo frontliner near the front so they die soon so they can proc this. You don't want to solo frontline them so they die instantly, but just having them near the front so they get targeted by some people and die like kind of early is pretty important. No scout, no pivot. This is like the little buddies of reroll. This is the best combat reroll or combat augment for reroll, period. If you have an uncontested reroll spot, this can be so good. it just gives you such an insane amount of stats. You need to be a little bit careful about it, because if you don't have the units, it's better to like sell your bench in order to make sure you're not playing shitters that you can't use later on. Either scout aggressively before picking this to make sure you're uncontested, or pick it really early and call it. Make sure your spot's the best out of people. Look at their units, look at their items. Like, you have to be careful, because if you pick this and you end up contested, then get ready to go 7-8 and hold hands. Overheal. This is really good in auto attack based comps. It's stuff like 6 rapid fire that auto attacks a lot. Van marks, because all your backliners auto attack a lot. And the healing is also low and nice. Slayers, really solid. You have a shit ton of AD. The healing is a lot. Graves can even use this, just because every once in a while has auto attacks do a lot. I know Zed felt surprisingly good with this, just because his every third stab would do a lot. If you can get Zed and Renekton online and Senna, like those 3 can end up putting out a lot in like a Dividend Core setup. Caster setups like Anima, Squad, and Misfortune don't benefit as much, just because, you know, they care about their cast more. Their auto attacks aren't really the source of their damage. Don't get baited into picking this in TF. His auto attacks aren't what do damage. His spell is. I see some people think because, oh, he's auto attacking so fast and you want Gitsu on him, it's good. No, it's not. Don't pick it in that situation. Yeah. One for all 2. This is kind of mid. It's supposed to be a 1-cost reroll combat augment, but just doesn't give enough stats to justify a gold augment. If you do pick it, you want it to be on a 1-cost board, something like Cog, where you run Cog Kindred, Vi Silas, or something Gorilla, where you run Mundo, Alistar, Seraphine, Zyra, so you can get the maximum value from it. It's not necessarily bad in like the 3 1-cost or 3 1-cost setups, but it's just you want to have a little bit more value for a gold augment. For a gold augment to give only 3 1-costs worth of stats, they're just better augments at that point. Paraphors, this is just solid. If you are playing a comp that has 2 4-costs, this is good. It's very simple, mostly good in verticals. You should probably check your planner to make sure you can use this if you do plan on using this, and yeah, it's good. Make sure it is 4 costs that you're carrying, or like itemizing. If you're playing like a reroll and you end up getting to level 8 and you are like, alright, I'm playing Silas and I'm playing Anima Squad. If your Xayah doesn't even have items, then it doesn't matter. Don't pick this. But if in most cases you will have a 4-cost that you are, or 2 4-costs that you are itemizing, 1 tank and 1 carry, and it's good. Piercing Lotus. This is just generically pretty good. It's just a lot of damage stats, but it has the potential to be super good if you are mixed damage comp. So a comp that does both AP and AD. Anima Squad's an example of this. Amp is a big example of this. Since it's really hard to get the item economy to make both a Shred and a Sunder option, usually you can only afford 1, but if you have a mixed damage comp, this can be so good. It saves you from having to build those items. You can then go for more real items, like true damage items, or anti-heal is something that you also always want to prioritize, and true tank items. It saves you from saves you a lot of trouble in the item economy now that you have less items to work with. So this is usually A tier, but in the cases where it saves you a lot of trouble, where you don't have Shred or you don't have Sunder, or you're mixed damage and you can only build stuff for the 1, it can be really good. It's better in comps that have multiple carries because you want more units benefiting from the Piercing Lotus, but even in single carry comps, it's not bad. Preparation. If you are able to stack this somewhat easily, say you have a lot of, say you have pairs, or you have like 3-cost units that are going to go on your endgame board early on, or you're playing a Scuttlepuddle or Crabbrave where the neutral rounds will always be a free stack and you don't have to worry about losing, it can be pretty good. In reroll, it's a little better because your units will stack naturally as you have copies of them on your bench, but in Fast 8, it can still be decent. It might be worth greeting for stacks by rolling until you have pair and then holding on to your units for a little bit and choosing to save econ, but if you're low, you don't always have that luxury. If you can stack it up, just make sure during neutral minions, buy some units. It's worth losing an econ points to buy some units to actually make sure you win the combat round while stacking your good units. The little stuff adds up. Also, grabbing units off of Carousel makes them automatically have 2 stacks, so if you grab a unit that you want off of Carousel, that can be a super good way to jumpstart your stacking on preparation. Pumping up. This is a very similar to the situations that you would pick Clockwork Accelerator, except this is kind of just better. I like this more. The upfront attack speed is a little bit more flexible because it does help your units get to first cast a little bit better in caster comps. It is still just good in Vanmarks and Emissary, and it just means that if you get into these other comps, like you have to play Pivot into Branch for some reason, you don't feel terribly sad. You're not as happy as you would be playing Vanmarks, but you're not gonna like be super unhappy with it as if you had Clockwork Accelerator. Scavenger. This augment feels like it does nothing almost all of the time, and that's because it kind of does. Maybe pickable if you have a lot of front load damage, if you're playing like a Vigar comp, or an 8 techie comp, or like a 6 rapid fire comp, but even then it doesn't really feel like it's doing anything because the items that you get are based off the champion you killed, so usually you're getting a lot of frontline items, or if they don't have an item, then you get a tailored item, so it's really weird, because if you end up having frontline items going onto your shitter backliners, then it's like kind of does nothing, and it's not even that great as a tempo option, because you have to just have a strong board that can kill things. Yeah, this is such a suspicious augment. I almost never pick this. There are probably some niche situations where if you feel like you have a lot of units on your board that are decently strong, say you're having in a Nitro reroll spot where you have a lot of 3 stars, but none of them have items, and you feel like you can get some kills and have the items spread around, maybe it's good, but even then, I'm just not so certain about this augment. I think it's so bad. Spiritual, very similar to when you pick Groundswell, except you have to worry even less about the AD. It's just, if you're playing an AD comp, this is good. If you need a sword, even better. Spirit Link. This used to be better before the nerf, now it's still fine. You don't really want to pick this on 2-1. You can, if you're gonna lost streak, say you have a Cypher set up, you can pick this on 2-1 and you'll know, I have a decent combat augment for later, but it's just not, no combat augments on 2-1 are that great. Later on in the game though, this is just solid. You want to pick it in front to back comp so the percent max HP healing actually matters. If you're picking this in a comp like 6 rapid fire or 8 techie or Zed, or like Slayers where you don't have much HP to be healing, or the HP that you heal isn't very valuable, then this is a little more suspicious. But if you're playing any traditional front to back comp, this is just a fine option. Sade Spellweaver. This is good in Vex. It's good melee reroll. That is very similar to how Healthless Wealth operates. I don't believe it's very good in many other situations. Maybe you could pick it in like a rushdown setup where you have super high damage, and then your backliners can like have a lot of overhealth or something. But I'm not sure if that is a really great idea. I think just stick to picking it in Vex and melee reroll, and then it's good in those situations. I'd rate this a little lower than Health as Wealth, but in Vex it's really solid, so. Trifecta. This is good in 3-cost reroll, but 3-cost reroll kinda sucks. At least it's the only 3-cost that's kinda worth rerolling, I think, off the top of my head, but at least it's like usually quite contested, so I'll try to get her. So usually the situations you want to pick this are you're picking it like a slightly better, or like a mentorship that only goes on 3 costs, but it goes on 3 costs and it's a little bit better. And it doesn't require you to enter positioning. You can treat it like that. It's alright in Vex for that purpose, because Varus and Gragas and Mordekaiser can all use the stats, and you do play them on your end board. But as a tempo option, it's okay. It's just some things can be better. It's better in the mid game than mentorship in some aspects, since you need a 4-cost to proc mentorship on your 3 costs. So this just gets you that value on their 3rd cost, and if you're planning on playing around 3rd cost for all of stage 4, then it can be pretty solid. Emperic Vitality. This, the nerf was too much. This just says get 12 omnivamp and heal like 4 or 5 player HP. It's so little. By the time you start doing damage, relevant damage, like you can do what? Maybe like 60, 70 player damage with it after you pick this. And how much does that even heal you? Not a lot. Like out of 100 damage, you would heal 12 HP. Like it's just not a lot of HP healed. It's 12% omnivamp. It's effectively a silver augment, but it costs a gold augment. Even in Cypher cash out spots, you might just prefer a better augment, so you can be a little bit more safe, or like make sure you're actually winning, or like get to 9 easier or something. Like I don't know, man. This shit just you would pick it in playing for huge Cypher cash out, where you are going to be very low after it. You're going to be like 10 HP, but you're getting a 400, 500 cash out, and you're going to win out, and it can get you 1 extra life maybe. In that situation, it's good. But in any other situation, it is just a silver augment. I do believe that is all the augments. I plan on going through some of the other gold augments of other tiers. I don't know if this is like the right level of in-depth, or you want me to go into more explanation of the augments, break down more, or if I'm yapping too much, I should just go through the slides and like say this is this and this is that. But if you have anything to say on how I did this, please tell me, because I just wrote the script like a couple minutes ago, and I was swatting flies out of the air while I was reading this off, so wasn't giving it my best effort. But if you feel like I should go a little bit more in depth for this to actually be meaningful, I can. Just let me know. Okay, bye.